How does a poor Vietnamese boy from a pagan family become a Catholic priest in a country where Christianity is punishable by death and then spend 16 years living in hiding while serving an underground church? What kind of faith makes a man refuse the simplest gesture, just stepping on a piece of paper with a cross, knowing that refusal means torture, imprisonment, and beheading at age 44? Why does the Vietnamese government today honor Saint Andrew Dung-Lac and his 116 companion martyrs as national heroes when they were executed as traitors for practicing a foreign religion? This is the story of Saint Andrew Dung-Lac, the Vietnamese priest who represents 117 martyrs who died for Christ in Vietnam's century-long persecution, proving that faith transcends nationality, that the gospel takes root in every culture, and that no emperor can kill what Christ has planted. What would you sacrifice to guard a truth that could cost you everything, even your life? As his footsteps echoed across hidden chapels and silent prisons, his conviction only grew stronger. Before we follow his final journey, pause. Hit like and subscribe so more forgotten stories like his can be uncovered from the dust of silence and brought back to light. In 1795, Vietnam was a land of emperors and rice fields, of Buddhist temples and Confucian order. The Nguyen dynasty was consolidating power, weaving together a nation from ancient kingdoms. In this world of incense and tradition, Christianity was a whisper, brought by Portuguese missionaries centuries before, rooted now in Vietnamese soil, but fragile, suspect, foreign in the eyes of rulers who feared Western influence. In Bac Ninh province, in the northern reaches where the Red River Delta stretched green and endless, a boy was born to a pagan family. They were poor, farmers or laborers, hands calloused from work, hearts shaped by generations of ancestor worship and local spirits. The boy's original name is lost to history. What matters is what he became. As a young man, he encountered something that changed everything. A Catholic catechist, one of the faithful who taught the gospel in secret, spoke to him of a God who became man, who died for love, who rose from death. The message burned in his heart. Despite his family's opposition, despite the social pressure, despite the danger already gathering on the horizon, he chose baptism. He took the name Andrew, An Ray, in Vietnamese, and the surname Dung-Lac from his region. But baptism was not enough. The call went deeper. Andrew felt drawn to the priesthood to serve this church that had claimed his soul. For a convert from paganism to become a priest was remarkable, almost unheard of. Yet he pursued it with quiet determination. He entered a clandestine seminary, moving from place to place as danger required, studying Latin and theology under Spanish Dominican missionaries who risked their lives to train Vietnamese clergy. The persecution was already beginning. Emperor Minh Mang, who would ascend the throne in 1820, viewed Christianity as a threat to Vietnamese unity and tradition. Seminaries had to hide. Priests lived as fugitives. But Andrew never wavered. In 1823, at age 28, in a secret ceremony, a Spanish bishop ordained him. He became Father Andrew Dung-Lac, priest of the underground church. His life of hiding had begun. For 16 years, he would run. When Emperor Minh Mang took power in 1820, his policy was clear: centralize authority, resist foreign influence, eliminate Christianity from Vietnam. Significant anti-Christian restrictions appeared early in his reign, with major edicts intensifying through the 1820s and 1830s. By 1833, severe persecution had begun. Soldiers hunted missionaries. Priests were dragged from hiding places. Catholics who refused to deny their faith were tortured, killed, and displayed as warnings. Father Andrew served in northern Vietnam, in the Tonkin region, where Catholic communities clung to faith like flowers in stone. He moved constantly, village to village, family to family, always one step ahead of the soldiers. Vietnamese Catholics hid him at tremendous risk to themselves. He disguised himself as a peasant, a laborer, a merchant. His vestments and sacred vessels were concealed in false-bottomed baskets. His chalice fit in his sleeve. He celebrated Mass in homes at midnight, windows shuttered, guards posted outside to watch for soldiers. He baptized infants in forests, their mothers whispering prayers while leaves rustled overhead. He heard confessions in rice paddies, taught catechism in barns, and anointed the dying in underground rooms that smelled of earth and fear and hope. He married couples by candlelight, blessed bread that would become body, spoke words of consecration that heaven heard, even when spoken in hiding. The faithful protected him fiercely. Many would die rather than betray their priest. They built secret chapels behind false walls. They created networks of safe houses, warning systems when authorities approached. When soldiers came to one village, Andrew would slip out the back and walk through the night to the next. Sometimes he hid in jungles, sleeping under stars, eating what little the forest provided. Other times, he hid in plain sight, his peasant disguise so convincing that soldiers passed him on the road without a second glance. There were close calls, so many close calls, raids that he escaped by minutes, informants whose information arrived just too late, fellow priests captured, tortured, killed. Each time, Andrew grieved, prayed, and continued. He could have fled. Missionary ships sometimes evacuated foreign priests to safety. But Andrew was Vietnamese. These were his people. They needed the sacraments. They needed a priest. Better to die serving them than to live safely elsewhere. He was described as gentle and humble, his voice soft when he spoke, his hands steady when he elevated the host. Despite the chaos of his life, he maintained deep prayer. Despite the danger, he showed compassion to sinners and firmness in doctrine. He was fearless before threats, joyful despite hardships. The faith he taught was Vietnamese, rooted in his culture, expressed in his language, alive in his people's hearts. For 16 years, he evaded capture. Then someone betrayed him. December, year 1839. After 16 years of running, hiding, and serving, the end came suddenly. A former Catholic, broken under torture, had apostatized, denied his faith to save his life. Then, for reward money, he began informing on other Catholics, naming priests, revealing hiding places. This was a common imperial tactic in Asian religious persecutions, not an isolated moral failure. He became one of many who, under the empire's systematic policy, traded information for survival or payment. He told the authorities where Father Andrew was staying. Soldiers raided the house in the night. Andrew was captured, hands bound, dragged away. He was 44 years old, in the prime of his ministry. His response was calm acceptance. He had always known this moment might come. The man who betrayed him lived with what he had done. Later tradition holds that Andrew, from his prison cell, sent word that he forgave him. The tragedy was complete. A brother in Christ had become a betrayer, and the betrayed offered only mercy. Andrew was taken to a prison near Hanoi and thrown into a wooden cage, a common Vietnamese practice for serious criminals. The conditions were brutal. The cage was cramped, forcing prisoners to crouch or lie curled. It was filthy, dark, and stinking of human waste and rot. Food came rarely and was often spoiled. Water was scarce. Other prisoners, some fellow Christians, some common criminals, suffered beside him. Guards were cruel, though some showed quiet sympathy when no one was watching. The torture began. Interrogators came, demanding apostasy. They beat him. They drove bamboo splints under his fingernails. They used squeezing devices on his limbs. They asked again and again, "Will you renounce Christianity?" His answer never changed, no. They offered him everything, freedom, money, position, life itself, if he would just deny Christ. His refusal was absolute, unwavering, gentle but immovable. Despite his suffering, Andrew ministered to fellow prisoners. He heard confessions when guards weren't listening. He encouraged the fearful. He shared his meager food rations. He led prayers when possible. His presence strengthened others. Those who saw him said his peace was supernatural, his calm inexplicable by human measure. Weeks became months. He awaited the final sentence, knowing it would be death. He prepared through prayer, through surrender, through trust. There was no fear in his eyes. Guards and prisoners alike saw it. The sentence came: death by beheading. They brought him before the mandarin, the local official who held power over life and death in his province. The charges were read: practicing Christianity, serving as a priest, corrupting Vietnamese people with foreign religion. Evidence was presented: testimony from the apostate, religious items found during his arrest, witnesses who had seen him saying Mass. The prosecutor urged the death penalty. The mandarin had discretion to spare him if Andrew recanted. And so came the offer, the final test, the simplest thing in the world: just trample on this cross. A crucifix lay on the ground before him, or perhaps a piece of paper with a cross drawn on it, a gesture similar to the Japanese fumi practice used during the Tokugawa persecutions. Just step on it once. The gesture meant nothing, they told him, just a formality. Then he would be free to go, his life spared. He could keep his faith inwardly, they suggested. His heart didn't have to deny what his foot did. Many had complied under torture. It was understood, forgiven, excused. The church knew what duress meant. Surely God would understand. Surely an external act done under coercion wasn't the same as internal apostasy. Surely survival was wisdom, not cowardice. Andrew looked at the cross. He had carried one like it around his neck for 23 years since his baptism. He had elevated one above altars for 16 years of priesthood. He had whispered to it in the dark, clung to it in fear, kissed it in gratitude. It was not just wood or paper. It was the sign of the one who died for him. His response was quiet but clear: "I cannot." He explained calmly. To trample the cross, even outwardly, even under force, would be to deny Christ. The external act and internal reality could not be separated. He would not deny his Lord, not even in appearance, not even to save his life. Better to die than to betray. No equivocation, no compromise, no mental reservation. His words were respectful but absolute. The mandarin was surprised. Most broke eventually under torture or the threat of death. This priest's firmness was unusual, perhaps even admirable. But the mandarin was bound by law and the emperor's orders. Christianity must be stamped out. Examples must be made. Death by beheading. December 21, year 1839. Andrew accepted the sentence peacefully, as if it were a gift. He was returned to his cage. Fellow Catholics heard the news and wept. Andrew consoled them. "I am going to heaven," he said, his voice carrying joy, not fear. He prepared for death through prayer, received final confession from a fellow imprisoned priest, and explicitly forgave his betrayer, asking others to pray for him. He wrote final letters to Catholic communities he had served. The words were simple: "Remain faithful. Do not fear. I will pray for you from heaven." There was no bitterness, no regret, only peace and hope. Even the guards noticed. Some asked him why he wouldn't just step on the cross and live. His explanation was simple: Christ died for me. I die for him. The logic was clear to them, even if the choice seemed incomprehensible. Several guards reportedly converted after his death, moved by what they had witnessed. December 21 arrived. The day of execution. The day of triumph. Dawn broke cold over Hanoi. Father Andrew was taken from his prison cage, chains removed, hands bound behind his back. He was led through the streets toward the execution ground outside the city. Other Christians were being executed the same day. He would not die alone. A crowd had gathered. Executions were public, meant to instruct, to frighten, to demonstrate imperial power. Some in the crowd mocked him, threw refuse, and shouted insults. Others were silent, faces troubled, hearts conflicted. Hidden among them were Catholics, watching with broken hearts, unable to help, able only to pray and remember. Andrew walked steadily, his lips moving in silent prayer. He prayed the rosary, decades of Hail Marys rising in his heart. His face was calm, almost serene. Witnesses later said his peace was visible, tangible, strange, and beautiful. He was not a man walking to death. He was a man walking towards something greater. The execution ground was an open field, already stained with the blood of others. Professional executioners stood ready, efficient and practiced. Officials sat to witness and record. Andrew's turn came. Any last words? He prayed aloud, voice steady despite everything. Into your hands I commend my spirit. The words Christ had spoken from the cross, now spoken by his priest. Andrew blessed those present, especially the Catholics hidden in the crowd, his final gift to his flock. He forgave the executioners. Then he knelt before the block, positioned his head, and continued praying. The executioner raised his sword, one swift stroke. Father Andrew Dung-Lac died instantly, at approximately age 44, on the 21st of December, 1839. His blood soaked the Vietnamese soil he loved, the land he had served, the earth that would receive his body but could not hold his spirit. His body was left on the ground, standard practice to humiliate and warn. But that night, Vietnamese Catholics secretly recovered it, risking their lives one final time for their priest. They buried him in an unmarked grave to prevent desecration, and the location was kept secret for decades. His death did not intimidate, it inspired. Those present at the execution, even some who had come to mock, left, moved. Conversions followed. Fellow Catholics found their faith strengthened rather than shaken. The persecution continued, but the church could not be broken. Andrew's martyrdom was one of many, but it became emblematic. The Vietnamese priest who chose the sword over the betrayal. One martyr died, but he represented 117. Father Andrew Dung-Lac's death on the 21st of December 1839 was not an isolated tragedy. It was one moment in a persecution that lasted over a century, from 1745 to 1862, through multiple Vietnamese dynasties and emperors who all feared Christianity as a Western threat to traditional Vietnamese culture and imperial authority. The methods of execution varied horrifically: beheading, strangulation, burning alive, and slow slicing. The victims came from every walk of life. There were priests like Andrew, hiding and serving until caught. There were catechists, lay leaders who taught the faith when no priest could reach them. There were mothers protecting their children's baptism. There were teenagers choosing martyrdom over apostasy. There were elderly farmers, young nobles, and entire families. Some died quickly. Others endured torture for months or years. All faced the same choice: trample the cross or die, deny Christ or be destroyed. Historical estimates suggest that as many as 100,000 to 130,000 Vietnamese Catholics may have been martyred over these centuries. From among them, 117 were canonized together on the 19th of June, 1988, by Pope John Paul II in St. Peter's Square. Of these 117 martyrs, 96 were Vietnamese, 11 were Spanish Dominican missionaries, and 10 were French priests from the Paris Foreign Mission Society. They died between 1745 and 1862 across Vietnam's 3 regions, in waves of persecution that rose and fell but never fully ceased. Andrew Dung-Lac was chosen as the representative name for the entire group, Saint Andrew Dung-Lac and Companions. He was typical in many ways. A Vietnamese convert who became a priest, who served underground for years, who was eventually caught, tortured, offered apostasy, and martyred for refusing. But more importantly, he symbolized the indigenization of Vietnamese Catholicism. He proved that the gospel had taken root, that Christianity was no longer foreign but Vietnamese, that the faith could be expressed in their language, lived in their culture, and defended by their blood. The canonization in 1988 was attended by Vietnamese Catholics from around the world, many refugees from communist Vietnam, carrying with them the memory of persecution that had never truly ended. Pope John Paul II recognized their suffering, honored their courage, and proclaimed that persecution had not destroyed the Vietnamese church, but had watered it with martyr blood until it bloomed stronger than before. Today, Vietnam has approximately 7 million Catholics officially, perhaps more in underground or unregistered communities. Despite decades of communist rule and continued restrictions, the church is vibrant. Vocations are numerous. Faith is active. And remarkably, even the Vietnamese government now recognizes the martyrs as national heroes, honoring their courage and integrity as part of Vietnam's cultural heritage. The foreign religion has become Vietnamese. The martyrs, once executed as traitors, are now claimed as patriots who stood firm for conscience. Their legacy reaches far beyond Vietnam. They stand as witnesses to persecuted Christians worldwide, in China, the Middle East, North Korea, and anywhere faith costs life. Their choice remains relevant today: comfort or Christ, survival or faithfulness, the world's approval or heaven's crown. The demand to trample the cross, literally or metaphorically, is still made. The martyrs answer from heaven. Some compromises cost too much. Saint Andrew Dung-Lac's message echoes across centuries and continents. Better to die once for Christ than to live in denial of Him. The poor Vietnamese boy from a pagan family who heard the gospel and believed. The convert who became a priest despite everything. The underground minister who ran for 16 years, celebrating Mass in darkness, baptizing in forests, keeping faith alive when emperors wanted it dead. The prisoner who forgave his Judas. The martyr who looked at a cross on the ground and could not step on it, even to save his life. They gave him a choice. It was so simple. Just trample this paper. Just deny for a moment. Just survive. You can keep believing inwardly. God will understand. No one will blame you. Live. He chose the sword instead, and in that choice, he chose for millions. One Vietnamese priest representing 117 canonized martyrs, representing 100,000 to 130,000 who died, representing countless more today who must still choose between comfort and Christ, between survival at the cost of soul and faithfulness unto death. His blood watered Vietnamese soil, and from that blood the Vietnamese church bloomed, living still, faithful still, Vietnamese still, Catholic forever. The emperors who killed him are dust. The empire that outlawed Christianity is gone. But the faith remains, and Andrew's witness shines like a star over his homeland. For every Christian facing pressure to hide faith, to deny belief, to choose the world over the word, Saint Andrew Dung-Lac stands as proof that simple faithfulness matters eternally, that standing firm when standing costs everything changes history, and that heaven remembers what earth forgets. The priest who died for faith in Vietnam. Pray for us.